I know you're not going to like it, but it's been over 30 years, and I think that we should remake the original Star Wars into a series or new movies. Hey everybody, welcome to a brand new video, and today we're going to be looking at some unpopular opinions on Reddit. Yeah, that's basically it. It's mostly talking about movies, but what else did you think it was? Well, let's just get right to it. Here's the first one. James Cameron and his movies are overrated. Aliens is one of my favorite movies ever, but I really just don't like James Cameron. Avatar wasn't revolutionary. It's mostly CGI, and he's not some godlike director. I don't think he deserves nearly as much praise as he gets. Edit, I don't think James Cameron is a good director, barring Aliens. I don't care for any of his movies. I can't comment on Avatar because I haven't seen it yet, but I will go ahead and say that Aliens is also one of my favorite movies of all time, and Terminator 2 is one of the best action movies that I've ever seen as well. I also think that Titanic is also a pretty revolutionary movie as well. He is certainly a director who has certainly created classic and iconic movies that definitely become memorable, and he always has this unique vision on how to do visual storytelling and how to craft memorable moments in filmmaking. He is also one of those directors that does hate quote-unquote Marvel movies, and while yes, I don't always agree with him on what he always says on the MCU, I do think that he is a good director, and he has proven himself to make really good movies. And I don't know what Avatar 2 would bring, since he is pretty good at making sequels such as Terminator 2 and Aliens. Okay, this may be cheating a little bit because it isn't about a specific movie or franchise, but it is talking about products of movies in general, so I'll go ahead and include this. Why DVDs are better than streaming services. Number 1, once you buy it, it's yours until you break it. Number 2, the bonus features. Number 3, stupid Google Play that just won't let me buy that Luca movie because apparently my card is not verified. Number 4, with streaming services, there is the hassle of signing up on like 2 or 3 different services just to get a different catalog. Dang you, Disney, why do you make it so tough to see some of your new releases? None of this happens with buying the DVDs one by one. It's just more expensive. Number 5, no fear of losing your favorite TV show because Disney reclaimed it and put it all on another platform. Number 6, the cover art of special editions of DVDs and how varied they can be with each re-release. And number 7, since DVDs are less in demand than before, you can get a lot of them at Value Village for a smaller fee. I kinda like searching for used DVDs at Value Village for that. I once found a copy of the season 1 of L Word for $3, but it is kind of hit or miss. Now first, I don't know if this is an unpopular opinion, but I do agree with this. I honestly prefer DVDs rather than streaming services, mostly because with DVDs, it's yours to keep. And if that movie or television show is no longer on that streaming platform, you're not going to be able to watch it anymore and you would have to sign into a different streaming platform, or even if it's like on no streaming platforms at all. And besides, if your internet doesn't work anymore, what are you going to be able to watch? You have the hard copy on your bookshelf and you can be able to watch it then. So yeah, I think it's smarter to actually buy the DVDs rather than just to go ahead and wait on the streaming services. It's not to diss streaming services, I mean, yes, I use them, but DVDs are the better way to go because you actually have them in your hands. Fight scenes in movies are so boring, rarely advance the plot, and are worth skipping most of the time. I've watched a good amount of content, and most movies in the genres that I enjoy end up throwing in a fight scene or 4. These fight scenes all feel the same. A lot of times the movies have the same stunt coordinators or they use the same/similar techniques, and they've just become unbearable to watch because it feels like I've seen it all before. It's gotten to the point that whenever I see a fight, I immediately fast forward whatever show or movie I'm watching and will only slow it down or rewind if there is dialogue. There are a few exceptions to this. I think the Marvel movies are a clear exception to this. That's not all the same, and it feels good. John Wick movies are also another exception to this, but not always. Really, the default nowadays seems to be, if there is an action scene, it's probably not worth watching. This is a fascinating comment, mostly because the action scenes would be repetitive to you. The Marvel movies would be an example of why you think an action scene is repetitive. Because the moments of how the action works in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I'm not gonna lie, some of it is really good, but at other times, when you understand the Marvel Cinematic Universe formula of how they do their stories, when they insert action scenes, you know where that's going to happen and how it's going to turn out in the end. which is what can make an MCU film pretty boring at times. Now, even with other certain action scenes, maybe I can understand what the person is talking about if you see like two people punching each other and it's just the same moves like over and over again. Take the Matrix sequels, Matrix Reloaded. I think that's the third movie. The third movie in the Matrix movie, they kept doing the exact same action moves over and over again to the point where I just started to get bored and tired of it. But with other action movies, if they can be able to move the camera differently, have different types of fight scenes going on, and different stuff to add into the mixture of it to make the scene intense, then I would say the movie is doing a good enough job trying to entertain me and letting me see where the movie is going next. They should remake episodes 4, 5, and 6 of Star Wars. I know you're not going to like it, but it's been over 30 years, and the best we get for expansion is the cartoon. I think that we should remake the original Star Wars into a series or new movies. I look at the fan films and think there is so much more they could do visually that we were limited within the 70s. They've done it with nearly every other classic movie and comic book movie, Spider-Man, Hulk, Batman, Star Trek. Why is this off limits? There are two different things that I do want to address with this, and they need to be separate. One, I think remaking 4, 5, and 6 and transforming it into a show, that is actually interesting, because we get to be able to explore more lore within this universe and everything that's about it. We get to be able to see more things explored with Luke Skywalker and what would have happened, like, after Return of the Jedi. Do we actually get, like, Han Solo's actual death at the end of The Empire Strikes Back? There's so much you could be able to offer within this universe that needs to be expanded, and if you would like to, you can actually remake this original trilogy and transform it into a show. I'm not saying like, oh, screw the original Star Wars movies. I mean, look, I really like that trilogy, but I do agree that within this universe and people who would want to explore more with this mythology and culture, doing something like this would honestly be something very fascinating. Now, the other thing that I want to point out is that going ahead and remaking it now, there doesn't seem to be a point in doing that anymore, because now we have, like, the prequels, and we do have the Clone Wars and the Rebels shows, and now we have the Mandalorian, Book of Boba Fett, and other Star Wars shows that are honestly being made. We also have, like, video games and comic books that are also created that are supposed to be canon within the Star Wars universe. And we also have the new Star Wars sequel trilogies that are now officially within the Star Wars timeline as well. And when you decided to go ahead and say, let's remake the original trilogy and just create a show amongst that, that's gonna leave everything a lot more confusing, and you're trying to figure out what's supposed to be canon and what isn't. Honestly, back then, it wouldn't have been that bad of an idea. I honestly would have been for it. I kind of like Morbius the movie. I did a video about critics who actually like the movie. Go ahead and check that out. Of course, if you haven't seen it, this will contain spoilers, so I guess skip to this next part. The writing is not that bad. I mean, some parts are undoubtedly awful, like the arrest of Morbius newspaper stand scene with Smith, but I do like the idea behind it and the situation and the evolution of the story. What the movie did really bad is cutting/editing. It is too fast, and there is not even the start of enough development for all we are presented with. But the solutions around it, like the ship, are good to me. It should have been much longer, more developed, and it would have been a good action movie. And I like the special effects. It was too much on the plate given too fast. We are missing entire parts, but it was way more enjoyable than Eternals as a quick Marvel example. To be honest, I don't think it's one of the worst Marvel movies ever, but I do think that it is one of the most forgettable films ever, and I kind of disagree and think that Eternals does have more credit than this movie does, honestly. I will agree that the idea behind it would have made the film good, but then they just transformed into this stereotypical cliche film that I've seen with superhero films that Sony usually takes a part of, that it started to make the film feel really dull, and they started using these cliche lines and the characters became insanely stale. None of them felt like they were interesting to me in the least. But there were moments, at least at the very beginning, where I was looking at the film and saw where this movie had the potential to be good. And if I were to go ahead and declare an unpopular opinion, I didn't think that Leto was that bad in this film. He's honestly one of the few things that made the character of Morbius a little more fascinating in my eyes. I don't like Disney movies anymore. Disney movies for the past 10 years have been the same. They are just so boring as they all follow the same sort of structure and just add a new character that looks appealing to children so that they will buy some form of merchandise. And some Disney movies I don't mind, like Toy Story and some of the older classics, but as time went on, my appreciation for those films have dropped. I think I understand what they're talking about. I am noticing more of the same structure on how they do the plot of their films, or how they do their storytelling. There's more nuance to each of their films, and in perspective, they're somewhat different with how they do their characters and what their message is about. And mostly when it comes to the animation, some of it does look a little similar when you look at their faces, but how they do their landscapes and their site locations and the personality of some of the characters, it is different enough where it isn't the same as the other Disney movies are before. I notice that a lot more often, especially with the Pixar films. But even if that formula is still noticeable, I think it's a formula that still works. It's like the Rocky and the Creed movies. They can follow the exact same formula that I've seen before with other stories, including with the past Rocky movies that they've already done. But even though it's the same formula, it still works so good, and it would still lead me to get the exact satisfaction that I would want from the movies. So I get what they're talking about, but I don't completely agree that Disney has gone downhill that much. Transformers 2007 is a top-tier movie. I think the Michael Bay Transformers movies get a lot of unjust hate. Yeah, the later ones are all cash grabs, but the first one is a spectacular movie. There is some great humor, really cool action sequences, and a killer original soundtrack, even featuring Linkin Park. For someone like me who grew up with Transformers cartoons, this movie was absolutely mind-blowing. It even holds up well today with rewatches. I love the plot, the action sequences, and it's a real nice self-contained movie that, in my opinion, would be well regarded if it was just a one-off movie. If it was just a one-off movie, then I do think that it wouldn't have received as much hate as it probably does have. But there are reasons why this movie is not good. The humor in here is very childish, and it isn't that great. The action scenes in here, while some of it is pretty fun, Michael Bay's typical drone shots and shaky cam can be very nauseous, and it isn't that exciting to see when looking at it in the movie theater, so some people can find it to be annoying. And also, this movie falls into the same trap that other cartoon to live action adaptations easily go into. There are side characters that people don't care for when really we want to see the real-life cartoons just be the forefront. And these characters in here are just dumb. They're not written well. They're stupid. And maybe that's a part of the fun, but again, they're not good characters at all. But honestly, I can see why people would like this movie. I like the movie as well. Just for the sake of it being dumb and fun, I understand it, but as a good movie standard, I definitely don't think it is. I can't stand Ghibli movies, which is Studio Ghibli movies, if you can't figure that out. Everyone I know loves all these movies, but I just don't get it. I may be biased because one of my favorite books ever is Howl's Moving Castle, and the film completely butchered the plot of what was originally a feminist satire. But I also think the plots are generally really unhinged, and while the animation is beautifully drawn, it's very weirdly layered. So I have seen some Studio Ghibli movies, and I really like what they usually do with their projects. Now, I have not read the book for Howl's Moving Castle, so maybe they can have their own say on how they feel about the movie. But as Studio Ghibli movies go, aside from like the animation being great, I definitely like that their plots are a lot more creative than other movies that a broad general audience usually sees. That's typically the fun when you watch a regular anime. They can be as creative as they want to be, but you can still get a meaningful message out of it. Maybe that doesn't work for everyone, and they find it so chaotic to the point where it's just becoming annoying, and it doesn't really come to them as something that they would enjoy or find to be good. But for others that like the imagination of, for a plot to expand the boundaries of what they're used to be limited to, then I say that can be really fun. It can also create movies that are really good. And with that last comment, we're going to end this video right there. Thank you all so much for watching, and what did you all think of all these posts from Reddit? Do you actually agree with what they're saying, or do you disagree with them? Put your thoughts down in the comment section below, and let's have a conversation about it. And like this video if you agree with what I say, or dislike this video if you disagree with what I say. I don't mind the dislikes. So that is it I have for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll be sure to see you in the next video.